Yo, what's up guys? Nate here from Protoculture and Shadow Chronicles. I'm back again with another how to use video here at Sonic Academy. Today we're checking out another UHG product. This is a Colourcopy, their bucket-brigade style delay. Let's dive in and check it out. Right, here we go, Colourcopy. Let's jump in first and just take a listen to what it sounds like. We're going to be using a simple arpeggiator patch from Anna just as the example for this. And let's enable Colourcopy and take a listen to what this sounds like. So you can see just by quickly flicking through some of the presets, it's capable of a really wide range of sounds, everything from rich choruses to some quite out there pitch effects and of course delays and almost reverb-esque sounding delays as well. Let's jump in to the controls. While we hear the preset browser, this is the typical preset browser that you find in all of UHG's software. You can tag, search by categories, etc., etc. You've obviously got a number of different presets kind of mapped out in categories, covering everything from delays to choruses and so forth. Right-clicking on the preset display at the top will let us just initialize that. And let's jump back in and take a look at the actual controls. You've got a high-quality control here, which enables more oversampling. We'll leave that off for now. Let's take a look at the sort of general controls. A lot of this should look fairly familiar, but when you start diving into some of the modulation and a few of the other sort of less seen controls, you'll find that you can do a whole lot with this plugin. We're going to run through these first. We've got an input and an output on the other side there. The rate control, this will obviously control the delay time. The beauty of this bucket brigade style delay though, because it's modeled after an analog delay, the rate actually adjusts smoothly, so you'll get those smooth sort of pitch effects as you adjust the rate up and down. There's no sort of glitching, seeing as it's not a sampled delay like a typical digital delay would be, so you're not going to get any of that sort of unmusical glitching and so forth. The regen is essentially a feedback control. Yeah, it is labeled as a regeneration rate or regeneration amount. Essentially just how long your delay line is going to carry on for, how many delays or how many times it's going to be fed back into the input of the delay. You've got a width dial here, which is going to control your stereo width, and then a mix dial. Obviously, we spoke about the output. Now, the output and the input can be linked with the makeup switch over here, which will automatically adjust the output according to what you set over here. Just want to note, be careful when adjusting this down. There is a delay with the makeup, so you can get quite loud outputs when you adjust this down too quickly. So you'll see you can hear it jumping up. So just be careful when you are adjusting the input and output with the makeup enabled. Double clicking, as you saw there, double clicking on anything will just reset the values for you. And any of these controls can be locked. For instance, the mix dial, we can lock this control. You'll still be able to edit it, but the lock will basically allow you to flick through presets without this ever changing. So if you want to be running this on a bus, for example, and you want the set full, you can flick through presets and the mix will never change from preset to preset. We've got a key control. I'm going to come to this in just a second. We're going to skip over that just quickly. The time base, you can see here, you have a number of different options. The 1 second, 0.1 second, you can go all the way down to 0.001 seconds. It's incredibly short. And then you have the synced modes from 2 to 1, 1 to 1, and so on and so on. This doesn't mean that you can't go higher than two bars. Selecting 2 bars will basically mean that at this rate set at 0 is going to be 2 bars. by adjusting that upwards, you can actually increase the delay time. And then you can hear the smooth transition from the high rate to a lower rate. Take a listen to now. And you can hear with that sort of all the way down to 100, there's an incredibly long delay on there now. Now, when you're dealing with incredibly long delays, you may want to kill the delay line completely. That's what this little exclamation mark is for, the panic button. So it'll kill the delay line completely and flush the buffer out. This is also useful when using the regen. You'll see these little green markings on the side. When you start hitting sort of 70 and above, you can actually start feeding the delay back on itself too much that it starts building up. So in that case, if you get a delay line that starts feeding back too much, you may want to just kill it with the little exclamation mark button there. Now, just to jump back to the key control here, you can actually input a MIDI note to control the time base. So we're going to grab a fairly short, we'll grab 30 seconds, we'll have this set at 0, and I have a MIDI channel here routed through to Colourcopy inside of Cubase, and some notes recorded in. So let's just take a listen to what happens when we play this back now. So the MIDI notes are basically controlling the length of the rate in this case. So you can use that to, especially when you're using quite high rates. So let's just do something like 0.1 second, and we'll turn the regen quite far up. You can get some really interesting effects, especially at those higher rates, where you can actually get sort of audible notes out of the delay as well. Let's just disable that for now. You have an invert button here as well. The invert will basically flip the delay phase completely. It's going to be quite subtle for the most part, unless you're working with quite short time bases like this. Let's see if we can hear something there. So it has this effect of actually dropping the perceived pitch down an octave almost. That is from inverting the actual delay line at the output stage. Lastly, you've got a infinite freeze button on the end, which would basically infinitely delay the delay line without feeding it back on itself. So we can jump into, let's go to eighths, take a listen. Really useful for creating sort of like long loop delay effects. Yeah, we got this little Sonic Academy thing. Yeah, you can actually, this is quite handy in actual fact. You can label these according to whatever tracks you are working with. So if you're working with quite a few of these, it'd be handy to add something like bass, for example, just so when you do bring these up, you know exactly which instance of Colourcopy you are working with. So I just want to take a look at the center panel here now as well. This basically houses your input routing and your feedback routing, as well as the time base as well. This is going to be handy when you're wanting to sync delays. So if we set our time base to, let's say, quarter notes, you can use these notes as a guide to delay the left and right channels individually. And now if you want to keep these synced correctly, you can actually use the Alt key, in Windows at least. If you hold down the Alt key and move these around, they will lock to specific note values, like dotted notes, dotted quarters, etc., etc. And that's obviously according to the time base. Obviously these will change if you switch up to a higher time base. You'll get longer values with these. Let's take a listen. Now, the input and output routing, you can actually change the way the input works as well. You can cross-modulate this, so left and right would go to opposite channels. Stereo is your default. You can also send a mono, well, sum both channels to mono that you're bringing in and have a mono delay line. And then you can sum everything to the left or the right channel as well. And then the feedback, you can select between cross feedback, so which the feedback loop, when it gets sent back to the input of the delay, would switch left and right. Stereo, again, your default, and then a mix, which both of them would be summed together, and then both of them sent to the inputs as well. So you'd be sending the left and right back to the left, and the left and right back to the right as well when the feedback is occurring. That pretty much covers the delay controls. Yeah, now I want to get into some of the controls along the bottom here where you can kind of really shape the sound a little bit further. You've got a ducking section over here. This is really useful for vocals in particular when you're wanting to add a bit of delay to a vocal, but without sort of masking the vocal too much. You can set this to amp, which would be the traditional setting, and dial down your threshold, and whenever that threshold is hit, it will reduce the volume of the entire delay, and you can actually hear that. It's not ideal, this source material we currently have, but you'll be able to hear that it is ducking it out. And then you can see as I stop it, the delay comes back up again, that green light indicating that the ducking is actually occurring. You have settings for fast, medium, and slow. That's just the time that it will take to come back up after the threshold has been gone under again. You also have this FB, or the feedback mode, and this is pretty interesting. Instead of ducking the entire delay, what this will do is essentially has the effect of ducking the regen rate, or the regen amount. So when that threshold reaches, i.e. you have a vocal that goes over that threshold, instead of ducking the whole delay plugin, it's going to essentially turn that down. And then when the signal disappears, that's going to come back up again to wherever you set it. So you can kind of hear this if we set that to amp again and we have this duck the delay. We'll turn it on. You can hear the delay is ducking. Now let's switch that to feedback mode. So what you're actually hearing there is the initial delays are still actually playing on top. They're not being ducked, but it's the regen amounts, the delays coming after those initial delays. Those get ducked down and then come back up again once the threshold is clear once again. Let's move into the feedback coloration section now. This is essentially like a saturation circuit that can be applied to the delay line. You have a number of different colors. I'm not going to go into the specifics of these too much. They're pretty self-explanatory. The resonant one is, as it says, quite resonant. Sparkle is going to be your brightest. Fuzz is kind of slightly saturated, but quite dark. I believe this is actually taken from the Lyrebird delay in Repro. Snap is going to be slightly flatter response, and then Dusk is also quite a dark, quite bass-heavy tone that you get out of that. And these can be smoothly mixed between one another. Let's just stick this into full. We'll turn the regen rate down, just so we can kind of listen to this saturation circuit. So this coloration dial is going to have no effect if you have saturation turned down to 0. If we dial that up, so you can hear the color changing there. You've also got a brightness dial, which will basically roll off the highs or add them in, just to control the brightness of the coloration circuit. Then the vintage and low switch that you see here, the floor, is essentially a noise floor. Being modeled after analog gear, obviously there is inherent noise in the circuits. So vintage, you are going to be hearing a little bit of that sort of added in noise. Switch that to low and your noise floor will be dropped right down. So it's a much cleaner, less noise in the system. Yeah, and that pretty much covers the feedback coloration section. Now lastly, we're going to move on to the modulation section, yeah. So the modulation section is interesting. There's a few things that you can do with this, from the chorusy kind of stuff to sort of tremolo, almost rotary speaker kind of effects as well, auto panning, a whole bunch of stuff that you can do here with this. So you have a few different modes. And I'm going to whack this into full again, just so we can kind of hear what's going on. You've got the rate, which is going to adjust the rate. Obviously, as we saw with the bucket brigade, as you adjust the rate, it's a smooth action, so you get that pitch shifting up and down. It's not that digital clicking and shifting of the delay. So by modulating the rate, you're going to get sort of quite nice chorusy effects, and we'll take a listen to that. In actual fact, let's just turn this down to a quite low. 1 second, we'll go for 0.01 maybe. Okay, so let's modulate our rate now. Obviously, the depth is going to be the amount of modulation that we are adding. You've got two different waveforms as well, a sine wave and a triangle. And then the frequency is obviously going to be the LFO speed, or the frequency at which that rate is modulated. So let's just dial back on that and listen. These two little dynamic dials next to it, they're going to affect how much of this is happening as well. So you see by adjusting the dynamic dial on this one, you'll have a higher range for the LFO. And obviously vice versa, if you turn that down, it'll be a much lower range. Then you also have a stereo phase dial. So what this is going to do is at 180 going to essentially shift the phase of the left and right of the LFO so that you'll have them playing at opposite stages. So what this allows you to do is, I'm going to jump back into these modes here again. Rate plus is essentially the same, but it gives you the full range of modulation. It's a much more pronounced effect. Let's take a listen to that. As opposed to rate. Tap position. This is going to adjust the taps here. So we can take a listen to the effect that that gives you. A slightly different kind of modulation effect that you get from that. And then amp, obviously amp is going to be for sort of tremolo effects. It's going to adjust or modulate the output of the delay. So this one is interesting when you start playing with the stereo phase here. You can get some nice auto panning effects. We'll just take a listen to this one as well. So you can see at 0, we're now modulating both left and right equally. For a nice tremolo effect. And let's switch these into 180, so we flip the phase of the two LFOs completely. And you get that nice stereo auto panning effect going on there. So that pretty much covers it for Colourcopy. Great sounding delay. It's got a real beautiful warmth to it. Go check this one out from UHE if you're looking for a delay unit. Definitely worth checking out. I will catch you guys soon here at Sonic Academy. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you then. Cheers.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content, and if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.